My daughter-in-law, Sandra, started counting my pills, not helping me take them, counting them, like she was keeping score. 3 days later, I woke up on my kitchen floor and couldn't remember how I got there. Stay with me to the end, because what she was really counting wasn't medicine. It was the days I had left in my own house. My name is Oscar Barnes. I'm 71 years old. I spent 38 years on the docks at the Charleston shipyard, and my hip's been shot for the last 10 of them. Bone on bone, the doctor says. Some mornings I can't get out of bed without gritting my teeth so hard my jaw aches worse than my leg. I built this house with my own father back in 1974. Well, I say built. I mean I hauled lumber and held boards while he hammered. I was 12. But it's ours. Was my daddy's, then mine and my wife Louise's for 34 years, until the cancer took her 4 back. Now it's just me and the sound of the harbor at night, boats creaking against their ropes. My son, Dale, moved in here with his wife Priscilla 2 years ago. Said it made sense, save money, help me out with the house, keep an eye on my hip. I was grateful, I really was, until Priscilla decided she was going to manage my medication. "You're taking too many, Oscar," she told me one morning, standing in my kitchen with my pill bottles lined up on the counter like she was inspecting them for a store shelf. I used to work reception at a doctor's office. I know how these things get mixed up when you're older. I've never once mixed up my pills. 40 years running a shipyard crew, keeping 15 men in a schedule straight in my head. I can count 7 pill bottles just fine. But I let her take over anyway. Didn't want trouble in my own house. Didn't want to be the difficult old man. That was my first mistake. Within a week, she'd moved my pill box into her and Dale's bedroom, said it was safer there, away from the humidity in the bathroom. I didn't argue. Within 2 weeks, I started forgetting things. Small things, at first. Where I put my keys, what day it was. I told myself it was my age, 71, hip full of pain. Of course my head gets foggy sometimes. Then came the Tuesday I don't remember. I woke up on my kitchen floor at 6 in the morning, the tile cold against my cheek, my hip screaming, and no memory of how I got there. Last thing I recalled was sitting down for dinner the night before. That was gone too. A full evening, wiped clean out of my head, like someone took an eraser to it. Priscilla found me there, and here's the thing that still sits wrong in my gut. She didn't look scared, didn't look surprised. She looked at me on that floor the way you'd look at a leak you'd been expecting, like she was just waiting to see where it showed up. "Oscar, this has to stop," she said, crouching down, voice syrupy sweet. "You've been so confused lately. I think it's time we talk to Dale about getting you some real help." Real help. I know what that means when a daughter-in-law says it with that particular smile. It means a facility. It means a room with a number on the door instead of a house my own father built. "I'm fine," I said, pushing myself up off that cold floor, hip on fire. "I just fell." "You didn't just fall, Oscar," she said it, soft, patient, like she was talking to a child. "This is the 3rd time." 3rd time? That was the first lie. I remembered exactly one other time I'd stumbled, and that was because of a loose rug, not my head. But she said it with such certainty, such gentle concern, that for one terrible second I actually doubted my own memory. That's the kind of thing that scares a man more than the falling does, not trusting your own mind anymore. I looked at her kneeling there beside me, blonde hair pulled back neat, not a hair out of place even at 6 in the morning, and something cold moved through my chest. Not fear exactly, recognition. The same feeling I used to get on the docks right before a crane cable snapped, that instinct that comes from 40 years of watching things go wrong before they actually go wrong. She'd been managing my pills for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks I'd gone from a man who ran a shipyard crew to a man waking up on his own kitchen floor with holes in my memory. I didn't say any of that out loud. I just nodded, let her help me to a chair, Let her bring me coffee I didn't drink because something in my gut told me not to trust anything that came out of her hands anymore. That afternoon, while she was out running errands, I went looking for my pillbox in her bedroom. It wasn't where she said. It wasn't anywhere I could find. But tucked behind her jewelry case, half hidden under a scarf, I found a small spiral notebook I'd never seen before. I opened it to the first page. There were dates, my name, and numbers that didn't match a single prescription my doctor had ever written me. I heard her car pull into the driveway. If you're watching this, drop the city you're from below. I want to know how far this story has traveled, because what I found in that notebook was only the beginning, and I need you to see where this goes.
I shoved that notebook back behind the jewelry case so fast I nearly knocked the whole thing off the dresser. My hands were shaking, and not from the hip pain this time. I got myself out of that bedroom and into my recliner in the living room maybe 10 seconds before I heard Priscilla's key in the front door. "Oscar, you want lunch?" she called out, like nothing in the world was wrong, like she hadn't spent 2 weeks turning me into a man who couldn't trust his own memory. "I'm fine," I said, "not hungry." She came in with grocery bags, and I watched her the way I used to watch a new hire on the docks, quiet, careful, waiting to see if they'd handle the load right or drop it on somebody's foot. She didn't look at me twice, just unpacked groceries, hummed some tune under her breath, acted like a woman with nothing to hide. But I'd seen those numbers in that notebook, dates going back 6 weeks, my name written at the top of each page, and figures next to words I didn't recognize, words that weren't the names of any medication my doctor at the VA clinic had ever prescribed me. I didn't sleep much that night, kept running it over in my head, the way I used to run through a shift report looking for the one number that didn't add up. Louise used to tease me about that, said I could find a mistake in a grocery receipt from 3 years back. That instinct hadn't left me, whatever Priscilla wanted Dale to believe. 2 days later, my granddaughter Tilly showed up on the porch with a duffel bag and a smile that near about broke my heart, because it was the first genuine smile I'd seen in this house in weeks. "Grandpa Oscar," she wrapped her arms around my neck before I could even get up out of my chair. 23 years old, going to nursing school up in Columbia, and she still hugged me like she was 8 years old running off the school bus. "Didn't know you were coming, sweetheart," I said, and meant it. Nobody had told me. That itself should have told me something, that decisions were being made in this house without me anymore. "Dad said you hadn't been feeling well. I had a few days off clinicals, figured I'd come check on you myself." She pulled back and studied my face the way nursing students do, like she was already cataloging symptoms. "You look tired, Grandpa." "I'm 71. I always look tired." But Tilly wasn't buying it, not entirely, and I loved her for it. She was the one person in this house who still looked at me like a man instead of a problem to be managed. That evening at dinner, Priscilla was different with Tilly in the room, warmer, softer around the edges, refilled her tea, asked about school, laughed at her stories about clinical rotations. I sat there watching a woman perform being a good hostess, and it turned my stomach, because I knew now what I hadn't let myself fully believe 2 days ago. Whatever Priscilla was doing to me, she was good at hiding it, good at being 2 different people depending on who was watching. "Grandpa's pillbox is right here if you want to help me sort it for the week, Tilly," Priscilla said at one point, all sweetness. "I've been managing it since his memory's gotten so unreliable lately." Tilly glanced at me, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not suspicion exactly, more like concern for me, worry that her grandfather was slipping. It gutted me worse than anything Priscilla had done so far, because now it wasn't just Dale being fed lies about my mind, it was Tilly too, my granddaughter, looking at me like I was already halfway gone. "I'm not unreliable," I said, sharper than I meant to. "I'm 71, not senile." "Of course, Grandpa." Tilly reached over and squeezed my hand, but I could see the doubt sitting behind her eyes now, small and quiet, planted there in about 30 seconds flat by a woman who'd had 2 years of practice planting doubt. After dinner, Tilly said she felt a little off, tired, her stomach a bit sour, and went up to lie down early. I didn't think much of it at the time. Long drive from Columbia, probably just worn out. I should have thought more of it. Priscilla brought her a cup of tea around 8 that night, said it would settle her stomach. Ginger tea, she called it, something she kept in the pantry for exactly this. I remember watching her carry that mug up the stairs and feeling that same cold recognition I'd felt kneeling on my kitchen floor 2 days before, that instinct telling me something was wrong, except this time it wasn't about me. I almost said something, almost told Tilly not to drink it, but what would I have said? That I found a notebook? That I had a bad feeling? I was still an old man who supposedly couldn't be trusted to count his own pills. Nobody in this house was going to take my word over Priscilla's, not yet, not without proof. So I let it go. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief and pain pills and a bad fall had my head running wild with suspicion that wasn't fair to anybody. At 11 that night, I heard Tilly's door open down the hall, then stepfalls moving fast and uneven toward the bathroom, then a sound that stopped my heart cold in my chest. My granddaughter, 23 years old, healthy as a horse that afternoon, retching and gasping like something inside her was tearing itself apart. I got up out of bed faster than my hip had let me move in years, and when I reached that bathroom door, Priscilla was already there ahead of me, and the look on her face wasn't panic, it was calculation.
Tilly was on the bathroom floor when I got there, her back against the tub, sweat already soaking through her shirt, her whole body shaking like she was freezing even though the room felt hot as an oven to me. Priscilla was crouched beside her, one hand on Tilly's shoulder, and for just a second, 1 second, I saw something cross her face before she noticed me standing in the doorway. It wasn't fear for Tilly, it was calculation, like she was doing math in her head. Then she saw me, and her face rearranged itself into panic so fast I almost believed it. "Oscar, call 911. Something's wrong with her." I already had my phone out. 40 years running a shipyard crew teaches you one thing above everything else. When something's going wrong, you don't stand there gawking, you move. I gave the dispatcher the address, my hands steadier than they'd been in weeks, because whatever fog Priscilla had put in my head, it burned off fast with my granddaughter dying on my bathroom floor. "Tilly, honey, look at me." I got down on my knees beside her, hips screaming. Didn't care. "Stay with me. Ambulance is coming." Her eyes were rolling, unfocused, and she kept trying to say something, kept trying to point at something, and it took me a second to understand she was pointing at the empty mug on the bathroom counter, the ginger tea, the one Priscilla brought up an hour before. "What did you put in that tea?" I asked Priscilla, my voice coming out low and hard, a voice I hadn't used since my last day running that crew. "What? Nothing, Oscar. It's just tea. I don't understand why you'd—" "What did you put in it?" She didn't answer. She just turned back to Tilly, playing the concerned aunt, dabbing her forehead with a wet cloth like a woman in a movie about a woman who cares. The ambulance got there in 11 minutes. 11 minutes that felt longer than any shift I'd ever worked. The paramedics loaded Tilly onto a stretcher, asked what she'd eaten or drunk, and I told them straight out, ginger tea, prepared by my daughter-in-law about an hour before the symptoms started. I watched Priscilla's jaw tighten when I said it, watched her open her mouth to argue and then think better of it with 2 paramedics standing right there. "I'm riding with her," I said. "Oscar, you're hip. You should stay here and rest. I'll go with—" "I'm riding with her," I said again, and something in my voice must have finally told her this wasn't a fight she was going to win in front of witnesses. At the hospital, they ran Tilly through tests I didn't understand the names of, and I sat in a plastic chair in the hallway of Roper St. Francis for 4 hours, doing something I hadn't done since Louise's funeral. Praying. Really praying. the kind where you bargain with God over things you have no right to bargain with. Dale showed up around 1 in the morning, ashen-faced, Priscilla trailing behind him with her arms wrapped around her like she was the one suffering. He hugged me hard, asked what happened, and I told him everything. The fall, the notebook, the tea, all of it laid out plain, the way I'd lay out a shift report. Dale looked at his wife. "Is that true? Did you give her something?" "Dale, your father is confused. He's been having memory problems for weeks, you know this. I made ginger tea for an upset stomach, that's all. I don't understand why you'd—" And I watched my son's face, my own son, who I raised, who I taught to change a tire and cast a fishing line and shake a man's hand like he meant it. I watched him choose. Watched him look at his wife, of 5 years, crying real tears in a hospital hallway, and look at his father, who supposedly couldn't remember what day it was anymore, and I watched him lean toward believing her. "Dad, maybe you misread something. The stress of everything. You're hip, you haven't been sleeping." "Dale," I said his name the way I used to say it when he was 12 and about to do something stupid. "Your daughter is in that room because somebody gave her something that wasn't ginger tea. I know what I saw." A doctor came out before Dale could answer. Young woman, tired eyes, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Barnes? Family of Tilly Barnes?" "That's us," Dale said, standing fast. "She's stable. We're keeping her overnight for observation, but she's gonna be okay." The relief that went through that hallway was physical, like a wave. "I do want to ask something, though. Her blood work showed elevated levels of a compound we don't typically see from food poisoning or a stomach bug. We're running it through toxicology to be thorough. Do you know if she had access to any medications tonight? Anyone else's prescription she might have taken by accident?" The hallway went dead silent. I looked straight at Priscilla when I answered. She didn't have access to anybody's medication, but I think somebody gave her mine. Priscilla's face went the color of the hospital walls. "If you're just finding this story, comment your city below, because what the toxicology report found 3 days later would blow this entire family apart, and I need you here for that."
The toxicology results came back on a Thursday, 3 days after Tilly's collapse. 3 days of Priscilla walking around my house acting like a woman wrongly accused. 3 days of Dale caught in between his father and his wife like a man trying to stand in 2 boats at once. The doctor called Dale directly, not me, since I wasn't next of kin on Tilly's chart. But Dale came home that evening and sat me down at my own kitchen table, the same table my father built with me 60 years ago, and told me what they found. "They found trace amounts of hydrocodone in her system," Dale said, staring at his hands. "Way higher than anything that would have been in her own system naturally. And Dad, it's not something she's prescribed." Hydrocodone, my hydrocodone, the same medication Priscilla had been managing in a pill box she kept locked in her own bedroom for the past 3 weeks. "Dale, listen to me now," I said, and I made sure I looked him dead in the eye when I said it. "I found a notebook in your bedroom, hidden behind Priscilla's jewelry case, dates going back 6 weeks, my name on every page, numbers that don't match anything my doctor prescribed me." Dale's face went through something complicated, disbelief, then doubt, then something darker underneath both of those. "You went through our room?" "I went through our room because my hip's been fine for years, and suddenly I'm falling in my own kitchen and losing whole evenings out of my memory. Because I'm 71 years old, and I know the difference between getting old and getting poisoned, and what's been happening to me the last 3 weeks is the second one." "Dad, that's a hell of an accusation." "I'm not accusing. I'm telling you what I found. Go look yourself if you don't believe me." He did. I'll give my son that much. He got up from that table and walked upstairs, and I heard him in that bedroom for a long 10 minutes while I sat there with my coffee going cold, listening to drawers open and close. When he came back down, his face had changed completely. He was holding the notebook in one hand, flipped open, and his hand was shaking. "She's got weeks of this. Dosages, Times, notes about your behavior after. Confusion increased. Balance affected, good. Dad, there's an entry from 2 days before Tilly got sick. It says, he stopped, swallowed hard. It says, need larger dose to move timeline forward. House needs to transfer before Tilly's next visit complicates things. The house. It had always been about the house. 4 bedrooms on the water, worth more now than my father ever could have dreamed when he was hauling lumber up from the docks with a 12-year-old boy trailing behind him. Priscilla had done the math a long time before I ever suspected a thing. An old man with a bad hip, already forgetful from grief and pain medication, slowly declining until nobody would question a fall, a stroke, a heart that finally gave out, and a son too in love or too controlled to ask the hard questions until it was too late. "Where is she?" I asked. "Grocery store. She should be back in 20 minutes. We sat there in silence, my son and I, both of us staring at that notebook on the table between us like it was something that might bite. I watched Dale's hand shake, watched 30 years of loving a woman crumble in real time across his face, and as angry as I was, as much as 3 weeks of being made to feel crazy in my own house had built up in my chest like pressure in a boiler about to blow, I still felt for him. Nobody wants to learn the person sleeping beside them has been planning their family's destruction like a business project. "What about Tilly?" I said quietly. "She could have died, Dale. She's 23 years old, and she almost died because Priscilla was trying to poison me and got the dose wrong, or got scared I'd catch on and decided to speed things up some other way." "I know." His voice broke on those 2 words. "I know, Dad." We heard the car pull into the driveway at exactly the 20-minute mark she'd told us. Headlights swept across the kitchen window, and I watched my son close that notebook and set it flat on the table between us, right where she'd see it the second she walked through that door. "Dale," I said, "however this goes, I need you to remember something. I'm not the confused one in this house. I never was." The front door opened. We heard her heels on the hardwood, heard her call out, "I'm home, got the chicken you wanted for Sunday," bright and easy like any other Thursday evening in a house she thought she still controlled. Then she stepped into that kitchen doorway, saw the notebook sitting open on the table, saw both our faces, and every bit of that sweetness drained out of her at once, replaced with something colder and far more honest. "Dale," she said slowly, "where did you get that?" Dale stood up from the table, and for the first time in 5 years of marriage, I watched my son look at his wife like a stranger. "Sit down, Priscilla. We need to talk about what you did to my father."
Priscilla didn't sit down. She stood in that kitchen doorway with the grocery bag still hanging from her hand, and I watched her run through her options, same as I used to watch a man on the docks calculate whether a load was worth the risk of lifting wrong. "Dale, I don't know what you think that notebook is, but don't." My son's voice came out flat and hard, a voice I hadn't heard from him since he was a teenager, standing his ground against the coach who'd wronged him. "Don't lie to me again, not tonight." She set the grocery bag down slow on the counter, and something in her shoulders changed, dropped, like a woman finally putting down a weight she'd been carrying a long time. "You don't understand what it's been like," she started. "Living in his shadow in this house, waiting for him to die naturally so we could actually have something of our own." "He's my father," Dale's voice cracked. "You were poisoning my father. You nearly killed my daughter." "That was an accident. I never meant for Tilly to—" "You put hydrocodone in her tea." I stood up from that table, hip aching, didn't care one bit. "There's no accident in that, Priscilla. There's only a woman who got greedy and got careless." She looked at me then, and for 1 second the mask dropped completely, and what was underneath was colder than anything I'd seen in 3 weeks of her fake warmth. "This house should have been ours years ago. You're 71, Oscar. How much longer did you think you had anyway?" Dale made a sound I'd never heard him make before, something between a sob and a shout, and he picked up his phone off the counter and dialed 911 right there in front of her. The police got there in 15 minutes. Detective named Reyes, older fellow, moved slow and careful the way good investigators do, took one look at that notebook and asked Dale to hand it over as evidence without touching it any more than we already had. Priscilla tried once more, tried the tears, tried "this is a misunderstanding," but Detective Reyes had already pulled up the hospital's toxicology report on her tablet, cross-referenced against dosage notes in her own handwriting. They arrested her in my kitchen at 9:40 that night. I watched them walk my daughter-in-law out of the house my father built, past the photographs on the hallway wall, Louise and me on our wedding day, Dale's christening, Tilly's high school graduation, and I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in 3 weeks. Not joy. There wasn't joy in any of it. Just relief, the kind that comes after you've been holding your breath so long you forgot what normal breathing felt like. Dale sat with me at that kitchen table long after the police cars pulled away, both of us staring at 2 cold cups of coffee neither one of us touched. "You should have believed me the first night," he said, "when you told me about the notebook. I chose her over you, and I almost lost you both." "I didn't choose her over me," I said. "You just didn't want to believe the woman you married could be that person. That's not a character flaw, son. That's just love making you slow to see evil when it's wearing a pretty face." He came and sat with me every day after that. The DA charged Priscilla with attempted murder and aggravated child endangerment, given Tilly's age at the time, and the toxicology and the notebook together made it close to an open and shut case. Her lawyer tried for a plea deal. Last I heard from Detective Reyes, she's looking at 20 years minimum, maybe more once they finish digging into whether this was truly her first attempt at this kind of thing. Tilly recovered fully within 2 weeks, thank God, though she still gets a look on her face sometimes when anybody hands her a cup of tea, and I understand that look, because I get it too. Every single morning I brew my own coffee now, alone in a kitchen finally quiet the way it's supposed to be. 3 months later, I stood on my back porch on a Sunday afternoon watching the harbor, boats creaking against their ropes the way they have my whole life, and Dale pulled into the driveway with Tilly in the passenger seat, both of them carrying grocery bags for a dinner we'd started doing together every week since it all ended. Just the 3 of us, rebuilding something that had nearly been taken from all of us at once. "Grandpa Oscar." Tilly ran up and hugged me the way she used to when she was 8 years old getting off the school bus, and I held on to her a little longer than usual because I remembered how close I'd come to burying her instead of hugging her. My hip still aches most mornings. I'm still 71 years old, still a widower, still a man who spent 38 years hauling steel at the Charleston docks. But I sleep through the night again. I trust my own memory again. And this house, my father's house, my house, the one a woman tried to steal by poisoning an old man slow enough that nobody would notice, this house is finally mine again, filled with the people who actually love it and me for the right reasons. Now I'm curious. If you were in my place, watching a stranger slowly take everything from you while everyone around you called you confused, how long would it take you to trust your own gut? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one who almost didn't.